There was much hype surrounding Black Myth Wukong, and now that it's out, it's definitely making huge numbers. But hype is just that, hype. What's important is whether or not Wukong lives up to those high expectations. Well, here's our Black Myth Wukong review, so let's see if it does. The story seemingly begins sometime after the events of the iconic Journey to the West. After achieving Buddhahood, Wukong ran back to his mountain to escape the dull, restrictive life at the Celestial Court. However, this created a rift between him and the heavens, and they ordered their warriors to apprehend him and take him back. Leading the warriors is Arlang Shen, the divine immortal of purity. After an exchange of words, they fight it out. In the end, Wukong is bested as the iconic golden circlet was put on his head, tightening on it to the point where Wukong was rendered powerless. Arlang delivers the final blow and we see Wukong sealed in a large stone. Wukong turned into 6 relics that were scattered all over the land. It is up to our nameless monkey protagonist, only known as the Destined One, to retrieve these relics and bring back Sun Wukong. As far as I know, the story is an original narrative that imagines what Wukong would have done after the end of Journey to the West. I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to Journey to the West lore, but even I can recognize some references to the myths surrounding Wukong in the game. For example, the turning into stone at the end of the intro is most likely a reference to Wukong being born from a magical stone. Ash to ash, stone to stone. Poetic. And of course, the iconic circlet that Sanzang used to keep Wukong under control throughout the entire Journey to the West. So while this is an original story, it looks like it's doing a good job of representing the mythological Wukong as accurately as they can. While references to the mythological Wukong are appreciated, the characters aren't particularly endearing. It feels like anyone who shows up is just a guidepost that helps the Destined One reach their next goal. And because of that, none of them are really memorable. It's hard to remember characters off the top of my head. You could argue that like Dark Souls, Wukong wants to be minimal with their storytelling. But even with Dark Souls' minimal storytelling, there are a lot of characters that became huge community icons like our favorite Sunbro. I don't really see any of the characters in Wukong becoming that guy. Other than maybe that headless dude playing the Ruan, his songs are bangin'. Ironic that the person I can remember off the top of my head doesn't have his. Because it doesn't say anything, the Destined One doesn't feel very engaging either. We don't really know why he's going out risking his neck to bring back Sun Wukong. It just feels like he's just there. There are 2 situations where solid protagonists work. One is if the character is a created character a la Dark Souls and Monster Hunter, which makes sense because that character is you, and the devs don't want to impose anything on your character. And then there's the silent character that you usually find in JRPGs. They can afford to be silent because there are party members who can talk for them, or dialogue choices that the player can use to characterize their protagonist. In Wukong's case, it's neither. So Wukong doesn't really give us anything to be invested in story-wise. Speaking of being invested, it's a little hard to be invested in the game's story as you kinda need to know Journey to the West to be able to understand what's going on. The game does a poor job of contextualizing the characters and enemies you fight. This is all well and good if the game was marketed only to people who are fans of Journey to the West, but they marketed this to a very wide global audience, who most likely haven't heard of Wukong, and will point to him riding on the cloud and say, Oh, Goku reference! The story feels very confusing to someone who isn't familiar with the source material. This was their big chance to get a new set of people invested in this important piece of Chinese culture, but with how hard to follow it is, it feels like the devs have put a heavily guarded gate where an open path should have been. The story is probably the weakest link of the game, but the gameplay is what makes Black Myth Wukong all worth it. The main draw of Wukong is that it strikes a satisfying balance between casual, straightforward action RPG and Souls-like gameplay. Some people may call Wukong a Souls-like, but we wouldn't classify it as that, just because of the fact that you don't lose anything upon death, a staple mechanic in Souls-like games. In fact, there's nothing scary about dying in Wukong other than being blown all the way back to the checkpoint. The RPG experience is also a lot more straightforward, as there isn't any build variety. You don't have to think about optimizing your stat allocations, and equipment is a fairly linear progression. Wukong also has everything you'd want in an action RPG: responsive controls, fast-paced and engaging combat, and progression systems to enhance your abilities. The game has a perfect dodge mechanic that just feels so satisfying to pull off. While we said that Wukong isn't a Souls-like, the bosses definitely feel like it. To be specific, the bosses bring a very Elden Ring kind of feel to the fights. Their attack patterns are similar to Elden Ring bosses, even utilizing that annoying delayed telegraph attack that baits you into dodging. This makes the dodging all the more satisfying when you finally get the hang of timing the attacks. Additionally, some skills allow you to gain damage boosts or stamina regeneration when you successfully pull off a perfect dodge. Boss fights truly are the highlight of the game, and the game knows it. The game gives you a boss fight every few minutes or so. To put more emphasis on these fights, Wukong also gave the bosses grandiose techniques and attacks that give the fights a very cinematic feel, similar to games like FF16 and Azura's Wrath. However, our big complaint about the gameplay is that the level design is a little lacking. Now, we're not expecting huge things from the level design like Nier's massive areas or Dark Souls 1's intricate interwovenness, but we feel like they could have made the map just a little easier to understand. The game has no map or minimap function, and with how the levels are designed, it's kinda hard to tell where you can go and where exploration stops. It's a shame because the game does reward exploration with extra boss fights and items and such, so a better exploration experience would have been the icing on top. I would often find myself jumping around to explore and find new pathways only to find out, oh, this is where the map ends, and I've been trying to climb up something unclimbable for like a few seconds. Visually, the game looks amazing. On the PS5, even with the performance mode turned on, the game is a feast for the eyes. On the PC, even if we don't crank it up all the way to cinematic quality, the game still looks breathtaking. While we do have a problem with the level design, the environments and the visuals of the map itself look stunning. The intro cutscenes are just wow, what a way to start a game. The character and monster designs also give off that unique Chinese mythology vibe. However, we do think that you should avoid playing the PC, at least for now. We experienced quite a bit of crashing and forced restarts on the PC version of the game, and we know we're not the only ones. However, the devs behind Black Myth Wukong have acknowledged this and are working on fixes, so hopefully the PC experience will be much better moving forward. No problems with the PS5 version. The game's audio design is nothing to scoff at either. I played the game using the English voiceovers, and I could attest that the voice actors definitely did a great job capturing their respective characters.
Except for that pig. You're the one who talks the tallest tales.
To add to this, the sound effects are satisfying and weighty, and even matches the Destined 1 staff as it changes shape and size from time to time. My only complaint would be that they could have added more voice lines for the Destined 1, as it could have added more personality to the game's not so easy to follow narrative. So going back to our question at the start, does Black Myth Wukong live up to the hype? Overall, yes, it does. While we would have wanted a more understandable story for newcomers to the Journey to the West lore, the gameplay shines by finding that satisfying middle ground between a casual action game and a Souls-like experience. The boss battles are a joy to play and deliver that fist pump level gratification when you defeat them. The game's a feast for both the ears and the eyes, and considering that this is the devs' first major project, we're looking forward to whatever new idea they come up with next. Although, again, we can't really recommend the PC version as of now since it's not really in the best shape. We're giving Black Myth Wukong an 88. So what did you think of Wukong? Which boss gave you the hardest time? Tell us below. Like and subscribe if you want more video game and video game related content. This has been GameMate, signing off.